You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, my name's Anthony Leveritz. I am host of the Next Pitch podcast. This is a podcast discussing the student athlete journey, incorporating getting involved in youth sports all the way through being a professional Olympic athlete and everything that goes into that. Today, we're going to be joined by one of my former players. This is a treat for me, Michelle Plouffe, who played for me from 2010 to 2013, 14. A really good player, an even better person. Was an Olympian, All-American, 19th pick in the WNBA draft. And as I mentioned, as good a player as she was, she's an even better human being. So super happy to have her join us today on the podcast. Michelle, thank you.
Hello.
I just introduced you. First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I am super excited. This is probably a way bigger treat for me than it is for you, but I'm super happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Obviously we have some history here, Anthony, so it's going to be some great conversation, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Give us a little bit of your background. So when people who don't know you, and you're in the elevator and somebody says, "Oh, you're super tall. What's your background? Who is Michelle Plouffe?"
Well, my go-to is to tell them I'm a gymnast, actually not a basketball player, because you got to mix it up sometimes.
And for people who can just see you sitting, you are 6'4", so you would be the tallest gymnast of all time.
Well, that is a stretch. I know you listed me at 6'4", but 6'2.5", I will claim 6'3". Yeah, but that's it. Who am I is a big question, Anthony. But I don't know. I would describe myself as first and foremost, a child of God, a sister, a daughter, an auntie. Those things for me are the most important. And obviously, I am also a basketball player, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a friend. I would say all those things kind of encapsulate who I am. And then what I do looks different based on those things. But I think that's the core of who. If that is a vague answer to your question.
No, I love it. And it's the fact that, that basketball and your sport doesn't define who you are is a really critical thing I want to talk about later on as we go today. But let's start at the beginning. When did you get involved in sports? When did you get involved in athletics? How old were you? And obviously we should probably put this out there. You have very athletic family, right? A twin sister, identical twin sister that you screwed around with me one time that I did not know the difference between the two of you. And then another sister that played for the University of Washington. So obviously a pretty good basketball lineage there. But when did you start getting involved in athletics?
Yeah, I would say it was kind of for our parents, a way to expel energy. So we're 5 kids in our family. And so me and my twin sister, Catherine, are the youngest. And so, we were always hanging around waiting after school for our siblings to finish their practices, playing outside. We were just very active. We're also we're all huge. So I don't know how they did it. They fed us all, clothed us all, and kept us active, which I'm so grateful for now. But yeah, we started, when I say we, Catherine is just an integral part of my upbringing, obviously. We're twins, and we have a very similar story, different identities, obviously, but it's just so intertwined. So if I say we, I'm just going to that she is included. But yeah, hung out in the gyms, in the corners of the gyms, getting into trouble probably. But it was 8 years old when I started playing basketball on my first community team, but played soccer before that. That's kind of like the sport in Canada every child starts to play.
Yeah, I screwed up. I didn't say you were from Canada. Gosh, that's so like kind of a big part of this. You're from Edmonton.
I am from Edmonton.
Yeah, so that I should have introduced that. Yes.
You are forgiven, Anthony. It's
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so soccer, played with Catherine, our brother Daniel, who's a year older than us. We're kind of the three musketeers in the sense that, we just did a lot together. We played on a soccer team together and we were like 5, 6 years old. And so sports were just always a part of what we were doing outside of school. One, because it's probably childcare, but two, because our parents, I think, just needed us to get some energy out. I don't know if they saw the athletic abilities and that's why they put us all in sports. Potentially, my oldest brother Chris was just a super athlete as well. He's 6 foot 6'10". Like he ended up being a huge guy, but he was super athletic. He was the goalie in soccer, which makes a lot of sense when you're a big guy. But all of us were just quite athletic by nature, and then our parents kind of nurtured that by providing opportunities to play sports, and we fell into basketball probably in junior high. Was Knew that that was kind of the sport for me. Though I played volleyball, still some soccer, but I really like the experience of having multiple sports, getting different experiences on different teams, learning different skills, interacting with different people. I'm just super grateful for that part of my upbringing for sure.
Well, that was going to be the next question that you just answered for me. Good job. Is the, kind of what, as a kind of expand on that a little bit though, the multi-sport athlete, I believe, is super
Mm,
important, and for a lot of the
yeah.
reasons that you just said. But what did it do for your kind of your brain of being able to go from one sport to the next and not just be specializing in something at 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old?
Yeah, I think it was super helpful. Nowadays, I feel like there's this trend or this pressure to be like an elite 8-year-old athlete, which I don't think exists. Like you're a child, and so you should be having childlike experiences of learning, of growing. And so I think that playing on different teams allows you to not always be the best potentially. So you learn those kind of, high EQ skills of learning and being of okay with messing up and learning different skills and not just remaining so potentially comfortable in one thing that you're good at. Looking back, I think that was a huge blessing that I didn't realize until like now in adulthood that could be beneficial because I do see now the trend of just year round
Yeah.
basketball for like an 11-year-old. And so I always encourage to play multiple sports because you learn the different skills, but like mentally you're able to adapt more. Whereas when you stay in the comfort zone of basketball 12 months of the year, yeah, you might develop like some great individual skills and maybe some on court skills. But I think just the overall benefits of being in different environments, being around different people, learning different ways to look at a sport or being influenced by different leaders is super helpful. And so I'm grateful for that. I encourage that with young athletes,
Yeah.
but it's hard because you ask, like, I'm coaching my 12-year-old nephew's basketball team right now. And like, if I asked any of the boys on the team, like, if they want to play basketball, like on another team, they're going to say yes because they love basketball, but they're also kids. So
Yeah.
as adults, we kind of need to help them understand the potentially limitations of only doing one thing and help them understand that it's okay to be uncomfortable and it's okay to not be good right now. And it's okay to try something new, which is not, I feel like, the messaging
Yeah.
a lot of the times right now.
Well, I think it's a great point of um, the thought process of failing, right? It's hard,
Mhm.
especially for parents, to watch your kids fail, quote unquote,
Yeah,
fail. But learning how to come back from that is one of those vital lessons that you can learn
yeah,
as a young person of, I didn't do it the way that I wanted to do it, but now I get to go practice and spend some time working on that skill that I may not be perfect at and see that improvement. And if
yeah,
all you're doing is something that you're comfortable in, you miss out on that important part of that journey of creating. Failure is okay. It's part of life. We all make
yeah,
mistakes, and being able to move on to the next thing. So obviously, at some point in time, you became a basketball player and had quite a journey. You ended up going to NIDA. In Canada's system's a little bit different than the United States in the way we support our athletes. But what was NIDA, and what did that do for you being around that? I believe it was grade 11 for you that you did
Yeah.
that. Yeah, grade 11, going out to Hamilton to be a part of that program.
Yeah, that was quite an experience looking back on it. So it was kind of like a prep school before prep schools existed in Canada, I guess. So it was basically the junior national team, like the 12 players from across Canada. And we moved to Hamilton, Ontario, and we went to school together and then practiced and trained for the rest of the day, like half day school, half day training. And I had known a few players from the year before playing on the junior national team. And so it was an intimidating experience. Like that's what I'm saying. It definitely stretched me and grew me in a lot of ways, but for sure on the court. Like I I don't think I would have made the improvement I did in a grade 11 year playing here in Edmonton. Um, if I was here versus there, like there's no way I would have leveled up in that way because it was kind of like a professional environment in the sense that we were training kind of like pros. Like it was intentional, it was intense, it was every day, and there was no like games on the horizon usually, which was which was a tough part.
Yeah,
Um, because we didn't always get to like play. Like that is a fun part too.
yeah.
But on the other hand, like our training environment was next level. It was like I mean, Natalie Achanwa was one of the players that was there. Taryn was there, obviously. A number of other ones went and played post secondary. I think all except for maybe 12 out of 12 of us went and played Div 1, actually.
I think 11 out of 12 played in the
11
Power
out of
5.
12.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
11 out of 12, and I think one played. I think stayed home and played in a Canadian school, is if I remember correct. I could be wrong about
you're
that,
probably right.
but that
You're probably right.
it was an exceptional group. I remember coming and watching you guys practice, and I was blown away. Like I thought we could win a national championship when you guys were sophomores and juniors with that team. I think Natalie did win a national championship, I believe, while she was at Notre Dame. But get done with that, right, and go back to Edmonton, and then you decide to come play for me at the University of Utah, which I'm still
Mhm.
eternally grateful for. But what was your your college experience like for you? Kind of that development, knowing that you wanted to be a pro, right? At that point in time, you wanted to be a pro, you wanted to be an Olympian, and you had some big aspirations around basketball. We'll talk about career stuff later, but the idea that you wanted to be a pro, what was that college experience like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know actually if I knew being a pro was on my horizon necessarily.
I did.
Actually, it wasn't until um
I just so
pardon?
you know, I knew it was on
You
your
did. You
horizon.
did.
Yes, I did.
And you probably told me,
I
right?
did over and over
Yeah,
again. Yeah, you're a pro.
yeah, yeah. But I didn't compute it really until I think it was Kim or Morgan who said something to me and I was like, "Oh, like I could really do." Like they said something like you would be a I forget what they said. Like I don't know whether it was in terms of like a six-figure player overseas. Just dropped a line of like you could definitely make it, and not just make it, like you would excel
Yeah,
over like professionally. And that's when it kind of hit me because one, it was coming from someone who like literally was in the women's pro scene and um yeah, it just hit different. You know how you need to have different voices sometimes.
totally. Yeah,
And
totally.
so that was like a seed that I was like, oh, that's the next step. Because I've always in my career and like evolution as a basketball player, I've always just done the best I could with where I'm at and then just walked through the next door that was open to me. And I don't know if I ever had even like Olympic dreams on my mind when I started. I don't think I did. I honestly, I started playing because I loved it. And then I saw my sister Andrea, who went down to the States on scholarship. And so I was like, oh, I can do that. She spoke into me that I could do that. So I was like, well, I'll do that. That's like the next thing I could do. And so I've had just people who've made a way or paved a way that I was able to see. And when I have built relationships with them, um, it makes it stronger and more real because you're like, okay, you think I can do that. I think then I could do that. And I also see it happening. And so even my first tryout with the national team in 2011, so the year before London, they invited like a bunch of junior, not a bunch, not a bunch. It was only a few junior players to the camp. And I didn't expect to make the team. I thought it was just for experience. And so I made summer plans, like I was going to go. And then they're like, oh, we're keeping you on the team. And I was like, did not see that coming. Like, I'm just glad people saw the potential in me that I didn't always see in myself. And so that happened. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's try out again, make the team again, because now I know I can be there. And it was like a constant like growth. Like I didn't come out with all this confidence being like, I'm going to be a 3-time Olympian and professional basketball player for 8 years. I didn't even think I was going to play basketball for longer than like 25 years old.
Yeah.
So I didn't see a lot of these things before I lived them and before people kind of showed me what was possible. But I always tried to do the best with what I had where I was at and have faith that it was going to work out if I stepped onto the next uncomfortable thing
Yeah.
because great things don't come in your comfort zone. If I wanted to stay comfortable, I would have stopped a long time ago.
Yeah, that's such a great point but that's that I think that comes from what you talked about earlier, right? Is failing as a young person and being okay with that and being uncomfortable going back into a
Mhm.
situation where you may not have been the best and you just keep
Yeah.
leading with your face and you keep doing it. And eventually, if you have the talent and the work ethic, it catches up.
Mhm.
So Olympics, one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do as a coach was get to go watch you and Kim play over in London in the 2012 Olympics, and I believe that you were the youngest Olympic basketball athlete in those Olympics. I believe that's the case. I think you were 19 years old, and what was that like? Being on that stage, part of that Olympic environment, representing your country, being you guys played London in the first game. The place was just a madhouse. What was, and I'm wearing a Canadian flag with my maple leafs on my cheek. And what was that like?
Oh gosh. Well, that feels like a long time ago, but at the same time, not. That was a pretty amazing experience. It was the first time that Canada had qualified their women's basketball team, I think in 12 years. So three Olympics, it had been three Olympics since they had qualified a team. And so a lot of the players on the team were veterans going on their last year. Like I think we had a handful who this was going to be their last go around. And so that was special to be on a team like with veteran leadership was a pivotal experience for me just in terms of seeing how to be a pro, like how to carry yourself, how to lead, how to work, like how I think that part of that experience with that team and that group of women specifically was like a game changer for me, just in terms of, okay, I have this experience going back to my college team now. What do I take with me? Like, how do I carry myself? How do I improve and level up? And I don't want to like just go back and do college player things, not after having this great experience. And so I think that was the most impactful for me. The Olympic experience was very cool, obviously, to be in like the village with all these amazing athletes, all different sports, all different countries, all different like body shapes and sizes and abilities and like languages. Like it was a really cool experience. And to be on a team that had, yeah, we had qualified, but then we got to the top 8 So we moved to the second round. I forget the exact format.
Yeah.
Um, but that was a big deal. Like we didn't just qualify and then lose all the games. There was another side of that I was I was still a little bit immature and that I was like a big fish on my college team, right? And then you go into a national team and like looking back, I'm like, that was so silly of me to even think some of the things I did. Because I wasn't ready to be a key player at that time. I was 19. I had no professional experience. But once again, the coaches, Mike and Allison McNeil, were pivotal. Like they gave me a shot. They saw potential in me. Um, and I would have loved to play for them for like more years, but they stepped away from the program and retired and went on to bigger and better things. They made such a huge impact. Um, but yeah, I had to learn some things. I had to be humbled a little bit there, just in terms of like, yes, you're a good player, but also you are in a lineage of these amazing athletes and women who have put in the work and put in the time and have experience. So that was also good for me. So that was a big that was a big lesson. I think probably the biggest that I took from that team was just um, being okay to play a different role. And I think that helped me also going back to college to see my teammates who were in the same role that I played on the national team and have a different understanding, because I've experienced it versus just being like, yeah, everyone's a part of the team, everyone plays a role, but then actually knowing like, no, you actually do
Yeah.
because I've experienced both sides of it, and it's important that everyone knows that they have a role and that they're playing a part and that you can still improve and get better and add and lead, but from a different position on the team,
Yeah.
essentially.
I saw a ton of growth from you in that period of time in that leadership capacity and coming back from that. And that was the year we didn't make it into the NCAA tournament and lost in the NIT championship game. An incredible run. I think we flew 7,800 miles in 3 weeks across the country to during that
Crazy.
experience. It was crazy. It was fun. But so I want to continue. You get drafted at the end of your senior year. It was a horrible time to be drafted because of kind of the shrinkage of the WNBA and both in roster spots and in teams being cut. So far less jobs. And then obviously it didn't work out the way that you wanted probably or the way you had hoped. But you continued to play and play professionally. And I think people don't understand what it's like to get on an airplane, leave your family and go to college. And you did that in college, but then you had to go do that again to continue your dream of playing professional basketball. What
Mm-hmm.
what was that experience like? And you were in France for most of that time, correct? Um,
Yeah.
how many years were you over there? What was kind of the difference between being a college basketball player, an Olympic basketball player, and now I'm a pro. Like I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
this is a job. This is a job that I'm
Yeah.
doing for someone who is paying me to put that ball in the basket.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a transition period. But for sure it was hard leaving my family. I remember speaking with one of my close friends at the time of like, how long do you think you'll play? And I told him, I was like, there's no way I'm playing past 25 because that means I've already been away from my family
You
for
told me
like
that. You said I'll play till I'm 25 or
15.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I told multiple people, I was like, 25 is a long time. Also, when you're like 19, like teeny bopper, you're like 25 so old,
Yeah.
30 is so
Yeah. Yeah.
so I didn't foresee um, the play out of my life overseas, but I played in France for 7 years and I was in Greece for my last year. Um, and it was definitely a transition period that it's crazy though because you can be in so many different situations in Europe. Like it's just there is no like this is what you can expect in this little box. It's very much like it totally depends on the country you're in, the team you're in, the coach you have, the management you have, and you don't get an official visit to figure out if it's going to be a good fit. Like you sign you have an agent. They try to find you a situation that is going to be a good fit. You sign the contract, and then you fly to Europe and you figure it out. Um, I'm thankful that I had experiences with the national team, which we had traveled. I'd been to different countries, eaten different food, not known the language all the time. And so I had like pro experiences without being immersed in like, no, this is actually your life. This is your job now. Um, Even Nita, like being self sufficient in a way where you're away from family and you have to figure things out. What are you going to eat? Where are you going to go? Like those things prepared me, I think, in a sense. You still don't know what to expect. My coach was a total nut job when I got over there. She was like, I was like, wow, what? This is like laid down on
Worse
the
than
floor. This is
me.
during the game. You never threw a temper tantrum on the floor laying on your back during a game. So,
No, I did. Oh no, I did not.
yeah. So
Thankfully,
you
I did not.
don't get the title for that one. Thankfully. So yeah, but it was an experience of like, what are you gonna do to prepare yourself to play? And not every team has a strength and conditioning coach and other support staff. Most didn't. And so it was like, okay, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna prepare? What are you gonna do with the rest of your time outside of the one, maybe two practices a day? Like there's a lot of things to figure out. I think it can be very isolating for players who aren't used to getting outside of their comfort zone and making friends outside of their team, even, or like building community. I think it's very isolating for a lot of players who go over there, like North Americans, because you might be on a team where no one speaks English, and then you
Did
have
speaking French help you? I mean, I know there's some there. Did it help you at all?
I my first year did know. I wish I paid attention in French, is what I learned. I knew how to ask where the bathroom was.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I would just like substitute words into this one sentence for like a whole year.
yeah. So when I was in Japan, I learned how to ask where the bathroom was, and I did exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doko ni
You just,
sunde imaska. Where are you from? Doko ni todo ga imaska. Like I would just the same thing over and over again.
yeah, that's what you, that's so funny. Yeah. You just do things differently. And you saw a lot of, honestly, just like people who weren't that invested in growing and getting better. Because even at the professional level, there's always going to be a top 10 mindset everywhere you go. There's going to be people who are actually looking to excel and grow and get better. And there's going to be average mindset. And it's happens anywhere you go in any industry. And so I was thankful that I had the national team that I was still playing on in the summers as a motivator to continually get better, but also like I'm just wired that way. Like I am not trying to be average in anything,
Yeah.
which is frustrating experience when you're around people who don't have the same mindset. But I also realize it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. What am I about? Why am I doing it? Who am I doing it for? What's my motivation is more important than what the majority of people are doing, which I'm just grateful. I don't know why I figured that out um, at a younger age, but it's helped me in everything.
Yeah.
But definitely in my career, it just kept me motivated along the way because not every season was easy. Some seasons we were playing for playoffs. There was another season where I'm like, I hope we miss playoffs by one spot so I can go home because it's been a long season. Because being away from family was a super tough part of the job. And so I did evaluate that like along the way, and then it came to a point where I was like, no, I'm ready to move back home and be close to family and go on to different things while still pursuing the national team. So it's always been it's always been tough to be away from family. I grew a lot, but there was definitely sacrifices or trade-offs that you got to make.
So kind of full journey here. You now you're getting close to the end, as we talked about, right? There's not a lot of basketball left in that body of yours. What's you've gotten involved in playing 3-on-3, the FIBA 3-on-3 stuff, and got a chance to play in the Olympics in that as well. And
Mhm.
then just went through an injury. I think the first real, I mean, you obviously banged up and nicked
Yeah.
up as you go, but your first real major injury at the end of towards the end of your career, tearing your ACL. How I guess two-part question. The FIBA 3-on-3 stuff, what, for people who don't understand that and haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's really fun to watch, super fun to play in. And number two, as you've now dealt with injury, what that kind of adversity, how has that been for you?
Yeah. Well, 3x3 has been a journey. It's been very rewarding in the sense to like build something from the ground up and like see how it's come along and actually set out to accomplish something, like playing in Olympic Games with a new sport for the, for the country was pretty amazing. Regardless of the outcome, the journey was definitely worth it. Tearing my ACL 9 months out of the Olympic qualifier, or 9 months out from the Olympics, was also a journey in and of itself, which I am super grateful for, honestly, looking back and also in it. Like, I just approached it in a little bit of a twisted way, being like, okay, let's see what we can do. Like, this is going to be a good test. And I think, honestly, before it, I maybe was getting a little, I don't want to say complacent, but maybe I was. And so being in that, like, adversity, knowing that I still had a goal, my goal for the last 5 years had been to play in the Olympics with 3x3. And literally when I went down, so we were playing in Mongolia when I tore my ACL. At the last 3 minutes of the final game of the women's series final, like of the World Tour final. And so yeah, I basically got like train wrecked, and it was a French player, obvious. No, I'm just kidding. It was not obviously, but they are. Anyways, side note. But I went down, and after it hurt a lot. So I was like, oh, that was probably my ACL. But then I was like, okay, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. I was like, oh, I got 9 months. We're good. So that was always my mindset, was like, God will make a way. And initially they told me it wasn't my ACL. Like when I first went down, the physio checked it out, and she didn't think it was. And in my heart of hearts, I was like, nah, it probably is, but I guess we'll see when I get home, have an MRI. And like going into the MRI, Paige had sent me a message, like before I went to the doctor's appointment. And I was just very certain that regardless of what it was going to work out. And I've just seen, like, for me personally, like, faith is a huge part of my life and who I am and how I do life and how I approach the world. And it, like, the journey of our 3x3 doesn't make any sense when you start up and like walk through it. There's so many things that shouldn't have happened but did, or didn't happen, and it was great. And so I was just very certain that that was in the cards. And so going into it, I told her, I was like, look, either it's not my ACL and God healed me and that's great, or it is my ACL and he's still gonna, like, heal me in time to play in the Olympics. Like, I was just very confident in that, because I am rooted in faith, and I just have seen I've experienced the journey and things that have gone on. And so it was a test of a lot of things, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I think I grew. And so that's how I approached it, though. Like, I went into the injury saying, I'm going to come out better physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It didn't happen by accident. I approached it very intentionally, and I put freaking everything into it. Like a 6-month ACL recovery is not what most
It's
people.
no joke. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
no joke. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had a great team around me, 2 people specifically. I was working with the Edmonton Oilers NHL team, their trainer, who is a genius and like mentally helped me overcome a lot, just like lifted the lid off of what I thought was possible and like what I should even think about. And my strength and conditioning coach and my surgeon. And I'm just so, like, it was essential that all these people were part of the journey. And so I had a lot of weird, it's weird to say, but it was a fun experience of just like pushing myself physically. And I hadn't had to do that up until then. I hadn't had to push myself max out every day on what I was doing physically. I hadn't had to do that in, I don't know, years, maybe ever. And so that was an experience. Um, Getting over the mental hurdle of to play in my first game back was a big one, and a lesson in that the law you can do the same thing today, or you can delay it and do the same
Be
thing
more painful.
with more resistance. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
I think that story that you just told is why sports is so important for young people to get involved in. And while
yeah,
you didn't know that that process was happening, you get to a point where you face something challenging in life, and it may not be an injury, it can be anything that happens in your life, right? And
yeah,
being uncomfortable, having to push through it, fail or have something bad happen to you, but have that mental capacity and mental strength, internal fortitude to be able to fight through that. It is one of the things that if sports is done correctly with young people, you don't even have to be a pro or an Olympian to go through that. It provides that platform to allow you to learn how to fight through those tough things when they come, because they're coming. Life is not
yeah,
life is not easy. Things are going to happen, and it is a platform that can allow for growth in young people.
totally. And I think that all those things are so integral, and also just having perspective on what it is that's happened. Like injuries are not great. They're part of sports, unfortunately, but also perspective. Like there's tougher things
Yeah.
is how I approach it. Like to have a perspective of this happens. I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I'm an overcomer. So if we approach that in sports, I think we'll have a much healthier view on failure, on things that come up. Obviously, having an identity outside of your sport, but something going back to youth sports is I see now like when losses happen or things happen, it like is takes people out. And I think that if we can use sports as a training ground for life, in that like, yes, this is hard, but you can do hard things. And it's a U13 basketball game that we just lost. Like you have a lot ahead of you. Like this, we don't need tears. Like
Yeah.
I, like just have perspective on life. I think sports is just a great training ground for so many things, but also just building like the resilience, the
Yeah.
mental toughness, the fortitude. Because so when life hits, you're like, oh, okay, well, perspective.
Yeah. So this is a perfect segue. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, well, many reasons I wanted to have you on. This has been amazing. But I want to talk. We're going to start covering this, and not every single time we have an episode, but I think it's a really important topic to begin having conversations about is mental health and mental health amongst young people. And I know in your life you talk about adversity, right? Like that an injury probably isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your entire life. So what your the importance of having a conversation about mental health so that people don't get to a point where they feel isolated and they feel alone and potentially bad things happen. What has that experience been like for you? What are you comfortable sharing? I know you lost a brother, and while you were playing for me, related to some of those issues. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, definitely adversity is a good word. And just like, yeah, life stuff. I think the conversation and, awareness and ability to talk about mental struggles and like things people are going through is integral to people feeling like they're not alone, people feeling like it being normalized that there's a struggle and that life is hard. Um, I do think it's important also to, like we were just talking about, help people realize like they are overcomers and potentially like there has been this destigmatization of talking about mental health. I don't know if all of it has been helpful, because now there might be this hyper focus on, what we're feeling, and instead of framing it as like acknowledging, yes, this is terrible. This is a crappy situation. These are real things, but you can overcome them and we can get through this together, I think potentially is the missing piece sometimes, versus hyper focusing on what we're feeling all the time, and putting into perspective, the feelings that we're having. Is it, if someone hurt my feelings on accident, different than if someone is attacking me personally, like, so I think there needs to be a separation, and like there needs to be nuance when we talk about these kind of things. And obviously everyone's situation is so different. But grief is a big part of that. And so, I lost my brother Daniel when I was in Utah, my senior year. I also lost my oldest brother, Chris, in 2021. But yeah, that's not something you can really prepare for. Like, you can't prepare for the things of life that totally come out and punch you in the face. But you can build resilience though, and you can be grounded, and you can have a breeding ground for healing in terms of relationships, in terms of, you know, um, getting through stuff. Like, grief is a process, and there's no right way or one way of getting through things. So my experience could be completely different from someone else's experience, for sure, even like my own family members. But one thing for me that I think was helpful was that I had people that were just there to listen and to be there, and didn't try to offer advice all the time, and but also like didn't encourage me to be like have a victim mindset in what I was going through, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, I don't think I knew this. I for sure didn't realize this at the time.
You're just going
Um,
through it. Yeah.
yeah,
I watched it.
you
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
yeah. So I pressed on and pressed forward because that's what I knew how to do, and probably could have taken more time and probably could have gotten through it differently. But I mean, I'm not going to judge myself. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think I handled it in a way that was best for me at the time. And there was people who encouraged me, like, oh, you should go talk to someone. You should go talk to someone. And I didn't want to. So I think that was also okay, because I did have a grasp and understanding of um, what I was going through. It wasn't like I was ignoring what I was going through. And so I think for some people, some things work better. I think some people maybe need to have more conversations around it. I think it depends on your community that you have, whether you're connected to um, a faith community, what your family relationships are like, what your friend relationships are like. And if you don't have any of those, I don't have that experience. And so I can't speak to what would be best in those circumstances. But I know some things that help. And a lot of times people think they need to have answers to people's struggle. But sometimes you don't. You just need to be there for people. You need to mourn while they're mourning, and just be there for people, which is, I think, one thing that technology has taken away is those close fellowships with people, the close relationships where you can show up at someone's house and be there for them. It's different than sending a text message. It's just, you can't replace human to human interaction. And so I think that now we see young people potentially going through some things. And I do think technology and social media is playing a huge role in the struggles that youth are having, because Like, we know it's different. This interaction is great. I can see you, we could
Yeah.
talk. But when we're in person, I can give you a hug. We
Yeah.
can talk, we can connect, and it's different.
Yeah.
And you also see through technology, people can be really mean to each other without getting punched in the face. Like, I think that used to be a
The fear
component
of
of it.
getting punched in the face has gone away a lot, and I think you're
Yeah,
right.
I think I was chatting with a friend who is coaching his son's hockey team, and he was telling me about just some of the behavior and things that are happening to like teammates and to opposing members of the team on like different apps of social media, and what the things they're saying, and the lack of accountability that there is when you say things and there's no repercussions or consequences. And I think that's also contributing to a young person's experience of, getting through tough things at school, not having the close relationships, not have being able to look people in the eye and just be there for someone and know that you don't have to have an answer, but you just sit with your friend and they're going through a family struggle or something, and just to show up is really important. And so that helped me through my experience of having people show up, of mourning with me, but also um, knowing, like, they spoke into me that I would come out on the other side, not to minimize the struggle, but just to be like, there's a purpose in the pain, which I believe. And so I think that's a message that people need to hear, is that we need to make, whatever we go through, we don't need to minimize what it was. We don't need to ignore it. I think that we can live with a greater sense of purpose when we've walked through something and gotten on the other side, knowing potentially we can um, have a conversation with people and uplift and encourage them and let them know that there's another side of the tunnel, that's not just the darkness that they're seeing. Which I think is why conversations are so important, because there needs to be hope filled messages. It can't be all doom and gloom
Yeah.
all the time and talk about how the world sucks and now everything's blowing up. Like, you could acknowledge that, but what if you focused on what's going right? What if you focused on the people that you have great conversations with who are trying to make a difference in the world, and let people know that they can be a part of that if they choose to, not to minimize, but just to be like, what part are you going to play in making the world a better place, of growing yourself so that you can grow your community, those kinds of things.
Well, that's pretty amazing there, Plouffe. I have coached a lot of kids, and that watching you go through that experience, it was. We were talking about this on the phone the other day. You went from being going for 35 and 17 against BYU on a Friday night to on a Monday being named National Player of the Week by ESPN, to having that trauma unexpectedly come crashing down into your life. And the way that you managed that, and obviously have managed a life since then and gone through it again, to me is probably, of all the things that you've done, is the most remarkable thing of maybe any player that I've ever had the opportunity to coach. So, and the message, that you're giving and that you're talking to kids about when you get a chance to, is so critical. And hopefully people listening to this, people just need to be listened to. They need to know they're important. Every once in a while, say, I love you. Tell them that you're thinking about them, and you're super glad that they're part of your life, and just be okay with expressing just little things to make people know that they're important. I really appreciate you sharing with us. This is we're getting close to the end here, and I do want to segue into number one. You don't even, it's embarrassing to me that you don't remember this, but I would have my players, both in meetings and then and as we progressed with what we were doing with coaching, had kids write a paper so we could build a template for their lives of where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do, and talked about building a 5-year and a 10-year crystal ball. What I want for you is to go backwards now to 10-year-old Michelle Plouffe, and all the things that you've been through and all of the world experiences that that you've encountered. What advice would you give your 10-year-old self if you could look back and talk to her today?
Wow. Well, okay, first of all, if you still have those papers that we were supposed to write for you.
I have some of them still. They're in a box. I do have some of them.
Oh
I
my
don't know if I
goodness.
have yours, but I do have some of them.
There's a potential that I didn't hand it in. But anyways, 10-year-old.
And I still would have played you. You're right. You would have. You were even late to a game, and I played you. Like, I've never had a player late to a game before, shoot arounds, practices,
Okay,
but you were
technically,
late to a game.
well, technically, Anthony, I was there before tip-off, so I was not, let's
That-
clarify, I
that-
wasn't late to the game tip-off.
I looked over at Matt. Where the hell is Plouffe? It's
Yeah.
45 minutes until tip off, and we're going through warmups, and you're nowhere to be found. So I think you came in and played just fine after you got in the game. But thanks
I
for
don't even
doing that
remember
to
that. It
me. I
was
appreciate
so
that.
frazzled. I just remember sprinting down the tunnel. And they're like, "Why?" And I was like, honestly, I don't know. I was so frazzled. You
Yeah,
didn't need to punish me. I was punished enough by
yeah, yeah,
by yeah.
yeah. It
Anyways,
was great. 10-year-old
also it
advice.
was a change of game time. That's what happened.
Oh
Anyways,
yeah, what everybody else got, but you somehow or other missed. That's interesting.
right. Yeah, that's a good point, mate. Any excuse is good excuse. 10-year-old Michelle, that's a great question. Who I think that I would tell 10-year-old Michelle a lot of this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I think one thing though is what I had to figure out in university was like my identity outside of my performance. And I think that for a long time, even my worth, my self-worth, my confidence, it was tied into how I performed. I know there was a number of times I was just in your office or Matt's office having like a little moment. um, but and I don't know exactly where that came from because my parents were never like, "Oh, we love you more if you score points or if you win the game." Um, I think though sometimes when you see that people are happy about outcomes, it can lead you to believe like that's the point. And maybe I would tell my 10-year-old self that winning isn't the point, though it is a good goal to have. Um, the journey is the point, and who you are and who you're becoming and how you carry yourself and how you treat people is the point. Um, not that I'm potentially was terrible. I don't remember, although I do thank my parents a lot for being so patient with me. um, But I think that that would have been helpful just to have the conversation about like pursuing anything like to be excellent in it is is good enough and you don't have to win because you actually can't control the outcome a lot of the times. And I think I thought I could control the outcome. I thought I could control the outcome of a lot of things. And so I think that would have been some helpful advice is that I mean, obviously, it's tough to say. I don't regret anything because I've obviously very thankful for everything that's gotten me to who I am and where I am today. But I think that would be helpful for 10-year-old Michelle to know that, um, yeah, it doesn't matter how many points you score. It doesn't matter if you win the game. Your effort, your attitude is the most important thing. Whether you're working hard and being a great teammate is the most important thing. And that, you're loved no matter what. And I think, like, deep down, I knew that. But when you're 10, you also make stories up, as adults do. We make up a lot of stories.
Yeah, we do. We tell ourselves a lot of stories. Well, I think it's great advice, and that whole journey. We get so caught up in the outcome, and I know I did it as a coach that I couldn't even enjoy winning to the point where because the next game I was so focused on that I forgot to enjoy the
Mhm.
things that were going on that were the reason why I coached. I loved the game. I loved the
Yeah.
relationships. I loved everything about the process, and then only got to the point where I cared about one thing was winning or losing. And that was not a healthy place for me to get to. And I would tell myself I would have you give me the same advice when I was 40, not when I was 10. So, last thing today, before I let you go is, everybody has to tell me a dad joke. So, I'm waiting for your best Canadian dad joke. What do you got for me here, Plouffe?
Well, this one is classic. It's been around.
Okay, all right.
It might have been already told on your show. I'm
Well,
not
we'll
sure,
find out
but
because I'll let you know.
okay. This is my favorite one to tell my
Okay.
niece and nephew. But what is brown and sticky?
What is brown and sticky? I don't know.
A stick.
Oh, there's so many other ways you could go with that. I wasn't expecting a stick. That's very good.
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate you telling me the joke. But more importantly, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I really appreciate your candor and honesty. And I really appreciate the fact that I got the chance to coach you. The watching your journey and seeing where you are now, not that you were, well, you weren't a finished product, but you were a pretty mature young human all the way through this process. But to see where you've gotten to and what you're doing now, I couldn't be prouder that I got to be a very, very small part of your basketball journey and life and growth. So thank you for allowing that, and also thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Anthony. It was a pleasure. And also, I didn't mention, but you were one of those people who, mourned with those who mourned, and also celebrated in times of celebration. So I just appreciate you for caring about me outside of on the court, though you praised that a lot, but I know you care more deeply about who I am. So I really appreciate that.
I do, and I don't want to belabor that point, but that was one of the more impactful times in my life as a coach, and watching that experience and going to Edmonton and being a part of the funeral and being there with you, and then kind of just navigating that journey back. It was one of those things that reminded me, and still reminds me when I think about it and talk to you and talk to my family about this. It's why you coach, is obviously, and I lost sight of that at times, but is just those relationships and being around people and creating an environment where young people get an opportunity to grow, and then when tragedy or adversity hits, being some part of that support system to allow them to grow through that and be, hopefully a mentor, and because I can assure you, there's no playbook for that for somebody like me to go through that, and hopefully that moment in time is something that you're proud of when you get through it. And there's many things I'm not proud of, but I am proud of how that whole thing went in a very unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you again. And we'll be talking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you. Hi, Anthony Leverett here. Next Pitch podcast. Just wrapped up a conversation with Michelle Plouffe. Absolute pleasure to chat with her. Not very often get to interview a former player of mine. Just an incredible human being. Was a great player. Obviously, played in the WNBA, played in the Olympics multiple times. Played in the Olympics. Played overseas. A remarkable player, but an even better person. And really, really enjoyed the conversation. And one of the big things we talked about early in the conversation was her experience of being a multi-sport athlete. And I think this is, a recurring theme of what we're talking about on this show. And I don't want to beat the drum. Oh, I do want to beat the drum. So I'm going to beat the drum. It is very important to be a multi-sport athlete as a young person, and not just to find what you're good at, but to learn from what you fail at. And we talked about, some adversity in Michelle's life as she went through, both some personal tragedy and some injury, and, real stuff that happened in life, and being able to draw from the experience of not necessarily being great at something, failing at it, not being the best, maybe feeling like you look silly doing something out there, and getting back up and doing that again really, really helped her when she had to go through adversity in her life, both through family trauma and through injury for herself. And I think that lesson that young people can learn from playing multiple sports and doing things that are hard for them is critical. And I really liked that point that she brought up today. We talked about injury recovery, And unfortunately, injury is a huge part of sport. If you're fortunate, you can stay away from it. But most people, if you play for a long enough time, something's going to happen. And really diving into your rehab like it's your season, and having a goal, obviously, at the end. The outcome of doing rehab and getting yourself back to being healthy is that you're going to get to play that sport that you love again. But there is also that same sort of, and Michelle talked about this, is it for her, she felt like it was the first time that she worked at her max towards something, which I couldn't believe, because she's one of the hardest workers I've ever been around in my entire life. But knowing that there was this goal for her of the Olympics at the end of this 9-month recovery, and really a 6-month recovery from the time she had surgery till when she was going to play, gave her that opportunity to attack something with a passion, knowing that there was something, a huge reward at the end of that. And I think, while injuries are not something that we want to encounter, taking that and getting that lesson again from sport just is another example of why these sports and being engaged and involved in multiple things are super important. And then we dove into mental health. And Michelle had has lost both of her brothers. One of them happened during her senior year in college, and I'll never forget, we had beaten BYU on a Friday, and she was named ESPN Player of the Week at 11 o'clock on Monday, and I'm getting ready to walk into a gym in Oakland, California, Bishop O'Dowd High School, on a recruiting trip at 1 o'clock that day, and get a phone call from Michelle's best friend in college, letting me know what had happened. And watching that process for her of grieving and understanding what she was going through was super impactful on me. Her conversation about it is that it's become destigmatized and it's okay to talk about, but that we really need to focus on the good that is happening in our lives, and not necessarily be hyper focused on all the negative things that are occurring to us. And while we're not mental health professionals, we're not offering mental health advice here, understanding that life happens, and we want to make sure we understand that it happens to everybody around us, and just take some time to reach out to the people around you and let them know that you love them, that you care about them, that you understand that they may be going through difficult stuff, and give people an opportunity to know that they're cared about. I think that's a message that if we could put that out across the airwaves, let people around you know that they're cared about, I think this world would be a much better place. But again, thanks to Michelle Plouffe for coming on the show and spending the time with us. Really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again soon.